This Torah is going to be about Purim. It's coming up on Thursday for most of us. For those of us who live in cities like Jerusalem, it'll be on Friday, actually, on the 15th of Adar, but most of us celebrate it on the 14th. So it's coming up shortly. This Torah is based on a shiur I heard from Rav Bernstein 3 years ago in my first year of yeshiva. I think it was actually my first month of yeshiva, amazingly. And it's actually recorded in his new Purim Sefer. It just came out a few weeks ago, and it's been great. So Rav Bernstein begins. By the way, I just have to assume that everyone here knows the Purim story. If you don't, it's worthwhile looking up so you can really appreciate the lesson. So the Vilna Gaon asks a fascinating question that goes as follows. It comes from his observation that we seem to celebrate Purim more than we celebrate Hanukkah. And that's strange. Now, why is that so weird? Okay, so Purim maybe is a greater day. After all, it says that Purim was established as days of feasting and joy. Now we celebrate Hanukkah, but it's not as extreme a celebration. Now the reason why the Vilna Gaon asked this is because the level of miracle that happened in Hanukkah was actually greater, seemingly, than the miracle that happened in Purim. After all, in Hanukkah, it was a small contingent of learners, of Jews, who fought against a massive, organized, well-trained Greek army, and we won. And not only that, which is a big enough miracle on its own, but later on, when we went to rededicate the temple, the oil that we had that we thought would only last for 1 day lasted for 8 days. And yet even so, we celebrate Purim more. And that's strange. And the Vilna Gaon wants to understand why. So in order to understand his answer, we need to just take a step back for a second and let's see this in context. Because we're talking about miracles here. And when it comes to miracles, miracles actually also have rules. So first, people are familiar with, say, the rules, the laws of nature. And miracles usually come and kind of sweep them to the side, at least temporarily. So when we think of miracles as rule-defying, not necessarily rule-obeying. However, that's not entirely accurate. Because even miracles, that is to say spirituality, they're also constrained by certain rules. That is to say, there's a certain network coverage when it comes to spirituality. Just like when you have a cell phone and it has network coverage, so too do miracles have network coverage. And depending on, just like a cell phone, depending on where you are, the coverage will be better or worse. So too with miracles, depending on where you are, it'll either be better or it'll be worse. So for example, are miracles. Miracles are set at their most powerful when they take place in Eretz Yisrael, and especially when the Beit HaMikdash is standing, when the temple is standing. Which is why, actually Haman, when he went to Achashverosh, and plotted to kill the Jews. Achashverosh, this is obviously in Chazal. It's not explicit in the Megillah. When Haman posed this idea to exterminate the Jews, Achashverosh was thinking, well, you want to kill the Jews, but the Jews have a really strong track record of people trying to kill them and then them destroying their enemies. So Haman, what on earth are you thinking to try to make me plot against the Jews? That's not going to end well for me, at least according to history. So Haman was tuned into this idea that the Jews are strongest when they're in Eretz Yisrael and when the Beit HaMikdash is standing. So Haman's like, no. The reason why the Jews lasted all of those years was because they were in their homeland and the temple was standing. Now they've been kicked out of their homeland and the temple is destroyed. So God has forsaken them. They won't have any miracles performed for them. The going is safe. Don't worry. You can exterminate them and nothing's going to happen. And in one sense, it's important to understand that Haman was actually right, because we were outside of Israel, and therefore the reach of miracles was beyond us, because we were outside of Eretz Yisrael. What Haman didn't take into account, though, was that there's a God, aka the God, who performs those miracles. And while it's true that there are certain laws to these miracles, and where your network coverage happens, God can change that. And Haman didn't take that into account, because God said, well, just because my people aren't in my country or in the land doesn't mean that I've abandoned my people. And that was actually a huge message of reinforcement to the Jews, because after all, we would have thought, if a person is down 100 feet in a subway, there's no way he expects to get any network coverage. It's over. He's not going to get. He has to wait till he surfaces in order to get the internet, to get texts, phone calls. However, if that person is down 100 feet below the surface and he gets a text message through, then that's something. So too the Jews. The reason why the celebration of Purim was so much greater than Hanukkah was because during the time of Hanukkah, the Jews were in Eretz Yisrael, and the second Beit HaMikdash was standing. So yes, it was a greater level of miracle, but it wasn't as big a deal as Purim, because Purim we were expecting nothing, and even so, God sent a miracle our way, and that was enormously powerful and influential. And with that background, the Vilna Gaon explains that not only was there a miracle aspect here present in Purim, but this is also reflected, that is to say, there's also a network coverage for other spiritual matters, that is to say, prophecy. And we see that evidenced through the Navi, through a comparison between Yeshaya and Yechezkel. Because with Yeshaya, the way he's introduced in the 6th parak is before he begins his first prophecy, he kind of gives us a brief interlude what it was like to receive the prophecy, and then he just launches right in. It's like 4 psukim, and then he cuts right to it. On the other hand, Yechezkel gives a full-blown, huge, lengthy, detailed account of what it was like before he received his first prophecy. If you're to look in chapter 1, starting at verse 4 until the end of the chapter, for about 25 verses, he explains what it was like to receive prophecy. So why is Yechezkel so detailed as opposed to Yeshaya, who is so kind of curt and quick about what it was like to receive the prophecy? So the Gemara in Chagiga explains. So Lema Yechezkel Dome. What is Yechezkel compared to? Leben Kfar Shirat HaMelech. To a villager who sees the king. The Gemara goes on. V'lema Yeshaya Dome. And who is Yeshaya compared to? Leben Krach Shirat HaMelech. To a city dweller who saw the king. Now what's going on? What's this comparison between villagers and city dwellers? So Rashi explains that a city dweller who sees the king, look, he lives in the capital city. When he sees the king, it's very neat and it's exciting, but it's nothing to get particularly excited about. Look, explain it. You're going to tell your family quickly what it was like, and then you'll move on with your day. That was Yeshaya. Yechezkel, though, that was like a villager who came to the city. Now, that is a new experience. So I remember I visited New York a number of times, having lived in Montreal. It's not so hard to get down to New York City, so it's impressive when I go, but whatever. After living in Dallas for a few years, where it's normally fairly flat, not so many skyscrapers, not so many people, it's very spread out, I came to New York City. I remember I was in my mid-20s, and I'd been there a number of times, but even so, I was like, wow! The buildings are huge, and there's so many people, and I was like, I couldn't hold back. I even started talking to my sister about it, how amazed I was. So imagine with this villager who's coming from the village into this big city, the capital city. He'll describe everything. He'll describe how busy the streets are, how many people there are, how big the buildings are, how beautiful they are. Then the closer he gets to the palace, he's going to keep going a blow-by-blow event of what it was like. He's so excited to meet. And then, of course, he finally sees the king. He's going to describe that in great detail. So that's what's going on with Yechezkel. Tosfot explains it slightly differently, but it's a beautiful nuance. What Tosfot says is this. It's like, look, the city dweller who sees the king, same deal. City dweller lives in the capital city. He sees the king. It's exciting, so he'll describe it, but then he'll move on with the rest of his day. On the other hand, the villager who sees the king, it's not because the villager came to the capital city to see the king. It's because the king came to the village to see the villager. That is the difference. Now, if a villager can you imagine, if you were this villager, you wake up, you had seen the king, you start telling the other villagers, it's pretty exciting. They're not going to believe you. They're like, what? The king doesn't belong in the village. He belongs in the capital city. What is he doing out here? Right? So it's the exact same thing with Purim. We were in Persia. What on earth was God doing out here? Because Yechezkel, by the way, says by the rivers of Babylon, he was outside of Eretz Israel. He didn't get his prophecy in Israel. He got it outside of Israel. So when Yechezkel said that he received prophecy, no one believed him. They're like, you're in the village. That can't possibly be. You couldn't have seen the king. Tell us what it was like. Prove it. That's why Yechezkel goes through a blow-by-blow account of exactly what it was like. He goes through all the details. And then, as he's describing it, as he's in the village, as in outside of Eretz Yisrael, the other Jews who had been in Eretz Yisrael and who had actually received prophecy before, because just contextually, there was actually a whole school of prophecy. There were hundreds of thousands, if not, I think, even 1 million prophets back in Eretz Yisrael. So those people who had received prophecy and are hearing Yechezkel describe it, they could say, I can't believe it, but yes, sounds like it. You must have seen the king. He was here. And that is one of the messages of Purim, that when it comes to Purim, we think that we're beyond God's reach. God has forsaken us. And the answer is no. Not only has he performed miracles for us outside of Eretz Yisrael in Persia, which is a big enough miracle, but even Yechezkel received prophecy outside of Israel. And now we see this reflected in this very strange law of Purim. That is to say, there's a Masechta called Megillah, and the very first Mishnah, in the first parak of Megillah, says the following: Megillah nikrat be'chadasar, b'shnemasar, b'shloshasar, b'arbasar, v'b'chamishasar. The Megillah may be read on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th of Adar. Now, we are normally used to reading the Megillah either on the 14th of Adar, which will be a Thursday for us, or the 15th of Adar, if you live in a city like Jerusalem. What on earth is going on with the 11th, 12th, 13th? You can't read the Megillah at that time. The answer is no, you could. Now, why is that? So just a bit of background. So, normally now we read the Torah obviously on Shabbat. We also read it on Monday and Thursday. So that was one of the reasons why villagers back in the times where we lived in Israel, a lot of people didn't know how to read the Torah, or specifically now, since we're talking about Purim, they didn't know how to read the Megillah, and they didn't know how to read it themselves, and they didn't have someone else to read it for them. And as such, as a matter of convenience, whenever they would be in the city, because people would go to the city to hear the Torah, or for market days, or if they had a court case, the times when those things would happen were Mondays and Thursdays. So if, say, you needed a court case decided on a new Sunday, and you couldn't make it, so just go in on Monday, and you'll be fine and decide it then. Well, okay. So let's say that the 14th of Adar, when someone was supposed to read the Megillah, was going to be on a Wednesday. The villager doesn't know how to read it and doesn't have someone for him to read it. So as such, you'd have to schlep all the way into the city, which is difficult for him to do because he's giving up a day of work in order to hear the Megillah. So as such, the Mishnah says, and the halacha is, that look, if it's difficult for you to go on Wednesday, that's okay. Then you can read it, that'll be the 14th. So you can read it on the 12th, right? So read it on the Monday before, and that way you'll fulfill the mitzvah of reading the Megillah. Now that sounds all well and good. Like, okay, so it's inconvenient to go on Wednesday, so just come a couple days earlier and do the mitzvah then, even though it's early. That's not the way Judaism works. I mean, imagine if it was Rosh Hashanah on Monday and Tuesday. So you're supposed to hear the shofar on Monday and Tuesday. So someone comes to you and says, yo, look, Monday and Tuesday I'm busy. I have class, I have work, whatever. It doesn't work for me. I'll hear the shofar on Sunday and then I'll be good. No, that's not the way our religion works. Judaism is usually accepting of that. If you can't make it, well, tough luck. You need to make it. Come this day or don't come any days, because that's the time to fulfill the mitzvah. We're not going to change the halacha to suit your personal schedule. So what's going on? The answer to this is that the Chachamim were actually metaken the halacha by Purim to reflect the entire message of Purim. On Purim, we thought we were beyond God's reach. We had just been kicked out of Israel. We had the temple destroyed. We were about to be exterminated in Iran, as devised by this evil guy named Haman. And even so, God not only performed miracles for us in the village, he also visited us with prophecy in the village. Normally it's true, the spiritual laws say this can only happen in Eretz Yisrael, but God said, no, it's okay. We're going to make this relationship work. I'll come to you in the village. So too here, with this halacha, that the villagers can come to the city even because it might be inconvenient to them, we see the same thing. You can't make it on Wednesday, that's going to be difficult. That's okay. We'll make it work. That is one of the central messages of Purim. The fact that God is constantly connected to us, and even when we're in exile, he's still with us, and he cares. All right. Have a Freilich and Purim.